Alright guys, welcome back. I'm going to be working on finishing up the oil pan for the Camaro here. Basically we have these, I think this is dash 10 AN fitting for the oil return bung. We have a cap for it down the road. Like I've said, we're planning on adding a turbocharger to the car, so putting in this now is going to make it very easy for the future. I have a little step bit to get it drilled out. We're still kind of dirty in the garage from last time I was working on this engine. We have the oil pan. I just let it drain here. I'm going to go ahead and take it out back, as well as the other parts that we have, like the transmission support brackets, some other things. I'm going to clean those up to transfer onto this engine, and also one of those transmission support brackets, I believe, goes behind this motor mount here, so I'm also going to check that out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go ahead and get those cleaned up and ready to put on the new motor. Alright, it's going to be kind of hard to tell, other than the heat shielding there, how I got it cleaned up. Basically, I just put a bunch of engine degreaser on it and hit it with the power washer. They're still kind of oily on the surface, so I'm going to take some paper towels and work on them. But they're a lot more cleaned up. They did have just tons of grime on it, especially these transmission brackets. You can see here the indent on the oil pan, so I'm going to probably just flip it over and like smash it with the mallet just a little bit just to smooth it out. Other than that, these are pretty much good to go back on the car. The oil pan, obviously, I have to drill that hole and put the oil return bung on it. And then also, I had sitting over there the starter. I'm going to have to also clean that up to get it put on. Once that's on, essentially the engine is ready to go on the Camaro. So I'm going to go ahead and get these dried up and cleaned up a bit, and then I'm going to start working on the oil pan here. So I got the oil pan here pretty much cleaned off. You can see all the paper towels I had there. I mean, I'm not being 100% efficient with those, but there was still tons of grime on here. So now that I have it on a flat surface, I'm going to go ahead and bang out this dent right here to just get that back, because Tristan did put the floor jack under there and it crushed it. So I'm going to go ahead and try flattening it out. May not look the best, but it is not as dented as it was before, so that's pretty much all we wanted to do. Just get this back flush and straight as it were, so we don't lose any volume. Now I'm going to go ahead and probably clean up a little bit more, clean up this other stuff, and then get prepared to drill the oil return bung. Alrighty, so I have the oil pan already. I just ran and just cleaned up the garage just a little bit, got some things out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get this drilled. Imagine this is head-on to the engine. The turbo would be sitting on this side, so the oil drain will have to come down, and I'm probably going to drill it right here, so it'll just drain right at the front. Also, if we're moving forward, it won't have any problems, so just drain right here at the very top, and it should come down, return to the oil pan. So I'm going to go ahead and get it on the vise and start drilling for it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start on this. I have a couple different drill bits to use, so I got a tiny one. I'm going to work my way up. Also to use a center punch to punch out where I'm going to be placing it, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Also adding some cutting oil. Alright, pretty easy first one. Now we're going to upgrade to the next size. Alright, I'm going to get this cleaned up before I continue on to the step drill bit. I will be vacuuming and cleaning inside this thing. Just get all the scraps out, scraps of metal. Comparing the oil bung to the drill bit, I think it's probably going to be about almost this full inch. So I'm going to go ahead and probably do 15/16 and see how that works. That is plenty big. So as you can see here, this fits in pretty much perfectly. Could be a little bit smaller, but it's not going to worry because we have gaskets for both sides, and I'm going to use some RTV as well. So this should be ready to go. Basically, I'm going to go ahead and get it all set up. There are plastic tabs that go on this side and the other side. I'm also going to put RTV on it so it sits snugly and pretty much seals it totally. So I'm going to go ahead and get on that now. Alright, I feel like I got a pretty good setup here. So those are the white gaskets I was talking about. There's little plastic tabs. There's one at the bottom and one at the top. Basically behind it, I just put a layer of RTV. I'm letting it sit to get tacky, so we can go ahead and get it sandwiched. Also have this nut that goes on the inside. Put a little bit of RTV on it where it meets it, so once it seats down on this plastic tab, it'll seal, as well as the back of this. And I also put some plumber's tape on it to seal it, so we don't want any leaks at all. So I'm just doing all this for, preventative measures. So I'm gonna wait on this, give it a couple more minutes, and I'm gonna get it installed. Alright, so I got the bung all installed. I also got more plumber's tape for when I put the cap on it. As you can see here, it just has a nut on there that sandwiches it on. I do have pretty much RTV on every other side of this, so it's going to be definitely pretty much sealed, and I'm going to go ahead and put this on now. So there we are. I also did tighten it down with a socket, so it's real secure right now. This one I might just do hand tight. Might get the socket on there and turn it as much as I can by hand. So otherwise, I mean, this is pretty much done. I put it in between these two. I almost put it under this one, but then realized I had to get a bolt through there. So this is pretty much all ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and get the oil sensor in here and the oil drain plug in, and then it should be good to put on the engine over there. Alright, the oil pan is pretty much ready to go on. I got the sensor in, the new bung, and the oil drain plug back in. Before I go ahead and do that, though, I'm going to put some RTV at the bottom of this on locations where I think there might be a chance oil can leak through. Basically, just like right here, to me, looks like that it's possible oil could leak through there. I mean, the gasket does pretty much cover that, just makes a line, but I'm just going to put a little dab of RTV on there and right there, as well as up front as well. So those to me look like spots where oil can seep through, and I want this to be as sealed as possible, because my experience, these 3800 motors are just like seriously leaky engines. They leak everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and try making those improvements, put the gasket on, get the oil pan on finally, and flip it over, and it should be ready to go. Kind of hard to see, but I got a little bit of RTV under there, just put a little dab on all four corners. And then once this gets pressed down with the bolts, it'll make a pretty good seal. Alright, you may notice that the oil pickup tube is not facing the same way as it was before. I was a dumb boy and I faced it this way, and the sump of the oil pan is over here. So just went ahead and flipped it real quick, so now we're ready to go ahead and get the oil pan situated on here. Alright, officially done with the bottom end of this. Should be ready to go and flip back over. I might keep it actually upside down just a little bit to get the transmission mounts back on, and maybe even the starter, because now thinking about it, might be easier with it this way instead of downwards. That way I'm placing things, not raising things. So I'm going to go ahead and get those situated then. Alright, so I got these transmission brackets back on. This one has the heat shield attached to it, but as you can see here, kind of, I mean, it'd have to wrap under the header, so we might try to make that work. It is to protect the starter, but not sure exactly how we're going to make all that clear, so, I mean, there's just one bolt to remove it, so we should probably be fine removing it. So now I'm going to go ahead and get the starter cleaned up to put on the engine here. Alright, well, it took a lot of work. The starter was really hard to clean. I just had to get the air compressor out and get a wire wheel. Just cleaned it right up. So now I'm going to go ahead and put it on the engine. Basically, just lines up right there. Sits right there. 2 bolts, lines up right here. Has access for the flywheel right there. And when it's engaged, it will spin it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this bolted down now. Alrighty, starter's all in. Might have to, yeah, definitely have to bend this, but that's where the heat shielding would go, and it would have to fold under the header there. So I'm actually going to try folding it and seeing how that works. Alright, so for right now, the heat shield actually does look like it fits. I mean, we might as well keep it on if we can. It'll just provide more life for our starter. Otherwise, pretty much everything on the bottom end's really ready to go. We do need to rewire the starter because we had to cut it. The harness was too difficult to get out of there. It was hooked up with the main engine harness when we couldn't roll the engine out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the engine over because it's pretty much ready to go. All this is bolted in and should be good to go to pretty much just set on the engine. I mean, we can get this fixed, but that's really about it. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over now. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and end it off here. I got it flipped over. You would not believe how ridiculously heavy it is to do it by yourself. But stepping over everything. Got the brackets on, transmission brackets, the oil pan, and the starter. See the starter right there. So we are pretty much good to go to get this on the subframe at least. I did not yet get this sandwich plate in. I mean, we have the engine lift, or the engine stand on there right now, so can't really get that in. Also, I need to get the flywheel and whatnot in. So I'm going to leave that for another day. But yeah, might as well say again, we're pretty much ready just to put this on the Camaro subframe. Definitely not ready to fully install, but we can certainly get it on the engine subframe now and pretty much start our fabrication process for the intake. Just make sure exactly where we need it and how we need it. So this engine, we still don't know what we're exactly going to do with it. Probably just going to end up selling it, but we need to get some bolts from it, depending on how this goes. So we're just going to wait on that. Otherwise, we're pretty much good to go. So thanks for watching.